So I'd like to be joined by Eamon Donoghue. We're going to preview the Allianz Football Leagues, which starts this weekend. Eamon, it's probably good to start talking about GA again. It's been quite a while, last Christmas nearly.
Yeah, it's great now. It was great last weekend to be able to watch some live games, and then Sunday evening sit down and watch the highlights and have some matches to look forward to this weekend. And even to be back training myself. So it just feels very surreal. It's come on very quickly after so long waiting.
Yeah, we'll head straight into it. We'll probably start with the main Division 1. This year, obviously, they're split into South and North, so it's a bit different. But obviously, the top two progress into the knockout stage where you can compete for the honours, and then bottom two with the relegation playoffs. I suppose Group 1, we have Dublin, Kerry, Roscommon and Galway. Now, obviously, I'm from Roscommon, so I'd like us to do well, but I can't see Roscommon finishing in the top two, unfortunately. It's a strong group.
Yeah. Well, you have to hit the ground running in this because there's no short amount of games. So you need to hit the ground running. And I think Roscommon's best chance is straight away, really, because even though it's the Dubs, you just there was a massive challenge match kind of feel to a lot of the hurling games last weekend.
Yeah.
Teams are coming in off different bases, and if there's ever an opportunity to get an upset, it's straight away. So and that Roscommon team is pretty settled. They only brought in 3 new faces into the squad and kind of three young enough lads. They haven't really made any changes at all to the squad from last year, essentially. So you'd expect them to be fairly settled. And if they were to get an upset, it should be they need it early on, because it's going to be hard for them to get a win out of that, and then you're straight away in trouble.
Yeah, because it's essentially like Super 8. You have your 4 teams, and we know from the Super 8 the last few years, if you lose that first game, it's an uphill battle straight away. Then.
Yeah, exactly, and there's the balance now between the teams are trying to obviously get something out of the results in the league and build a bit of momentum in that regard, but they're also trying to get a certain amount of training in at this time of year. So if they lose the first game, they nearly try and decide, right, we're going to just throw the bucket in the championship now and put all of our hard training in regarding that. So I just think that first game, in terms of what they're going to give in terms of priority to the league and just getting a bit of momentum, it's crucial, straight away starting strong.
Yeah, because it is an interesting group, because the other game you have Kerry and Galway, and I think they're 2 teams, along with maybe the likes of Donegal and Tyrone, with points to prove this year. The way Kerry lost to Cork, a lot of criticism came their way, and even Galway, all the hype going into last year, the lockdown probably did them no favours, and they went out tamely enough, a couple of games against Mayo and Dublin. So they'll want to hit the ground running as well.
Yeah, Galway's a funny one. They were so poor in the championship, really, but they did have a lot of injuries. They had a huge amount of injuries last year in the championship, and they had been very impressive in the league, and they've been playing kind of a really kind of forward-thinking, skill-based game. But that's one thing which is hard to maintain now when no one's played any football. So that'd be an interesting one. But they're 2 counties who have plenty of talent and plenty of quality. But they could easily get themselves in trouble, and they both need to start strong because of finishing last year poorly. They can't really afford to have a sluggish league campaign. There'll be an awful lot of pressure on them coming into championship then.
Yeah, it will be interesting to see how Galway actually set up, because the league, they went open enough. Obviously, Kevin Walsh was criticised for this defensive strategy that he brought in. But even Kevin McStay told me last year there was a reason why Kevin Walsh probably went so defensive. Maybe them Galway defenders aren't good enough to mark man on man and go at a 15 on 15 sort of game.
Yeah. Well, the Galway defense was poor, and even the amount of rotations of their goalkeeper and the changing of it, and they were quite small, and they needed protection. So that's why they set up in the way they did. I think Kevin Walsh, they brought it very extreme. I think he can go defensive, but still be looking for the tackle. They were kind of just defending areas a bit too much. But there was a reason for it, and Galway were relatively successful. From where Kevin Walsh took that team over, they improved an awful lot under his tenure. And Port Joyce needs to do a lot better in that, to because he's last year didn't even do as well as they had done under Walsh.
Yeah.
So, but like it's very hard to judge management or anything even on last year. The amount of preparation they had, how disrupted everything was. But yeah, like Joyce doesn't strike me as someone who's going to be too flustered by what other people are saying or how other people like what he's achieved in the game and just kind of character he is. Like he's going to set his team up the way he wants to play. They kind of held back a small bit more in the championship last year, but because after what happened to them in the league game against Mayo, I think they kind of they had to. But yeah, I'd expect to see them again trying a lot of players. I think he'll try a good few players, and they'll be trying to play a very forward-thinking game. Like Steed coming into the middle of the field there, he was missing in the like a few players that were key to the way that he wanted them to play in the league that were missing in the championship will make a massive difference. Having Comer inside as a focal point, having Steed, or even Comer, he was floating around a lot in the league last year. Having Steed around the middle as a kick passer. John Daly last year as well got in. Like he's a great kick passer from the back line. And when you take away those players, if you have a guy who's a runner or a player who kind of keeps things safe and you want to play an expansive game, he doesn't know how to play that way. So he's going to play the way he plays anyway. So for them, it's about getting the right team on the field, I think.
Yeah, and probably Kerry, on the other hand, were criticised for going too defensive again in that Cork game and probably not playing to their strengths. It's probably just getting that balance. And Peter Keane, he probably did go that bit defensive. I think did he bring in Brino Bjorkliuk or something for that Cork game? And again, he got a lot of criticism from Kerry fans and outside as well.
Yeah, and like to be honest, rightly so, because like that game, that was brutal conditions. Like in fairness, but they were so standoffish, and like that was the same as Walsh's Galway, and like if a team is playing that kind of football, it's very hard for fans or anything like that to kind of show any sympathy for it because there's no intensity or anything in play, so it's very frustrating. But it's not like the players are not showing effort or anything. It's just I think you kind of become a bit trapped by the system, and a bit too focused on it. I know when Donny Buckley had been involved with Kerry the year before, like he focuses in terms of defence on the actual skill set of tackling, and you've seen that with Mayo last year. You know, the importance of when you have that like skill set of tackling, where Kerry last year was, I think it was a bit too methodical, and it was all system based. And yeah, you go down that road too much, you just have lads who are kind of standing in place because they think they need to be there instead of actually pushing up and tackling. And it makes, if you're playing against a team that you're a lot better than it can bring them down, it can bring you down to their level.
Yeah, because if you do play that defensive, even ultra defensive sort of system, you've got to win, because if you don't win games, people are not going to put up with it. They'll put up with it so much if you get the results, but if you don't win them, you know, they're not going to stand for it. Yeah,
and that's even in the first year, Kerry had lads behind the ball and they were pushing up and tackling, and where last year it just seemed a bit too. Yeah, no one could get behind watching your team just standing there like it's very easy to fall into that trap because you're looking at, you know, this is where the gaps are, this is where we're getting exposed, let's fill that gap, and so on and so forth. But like at the end of the day, you get too caught up on that, you end up with a static game. And yeah, you said you have to win. If you want to play that kind of really dull, like margins football, you need to be winning. You have to be winning, like, and especially against teams that you know that last year Cork are, you know, they had to win that game. Like Cork are way down below in the divisions and they should have been beating them.
Yeah, the other side, Division 1, is kind of like a mini Ulster Championship with Donegal, Tyrone, Monaghan and Armagh. Tyrone have new management. Obviously Mickey Hart stepped away. It's probably not disrespectful to Mickey Hart, but probably a bit of a buzz around the county, just that bit of freshness going into the camp now, and people going to be looking forward to seeing maybe a new Tyrone.
Yeah, well, a lot of those kind of talented forwards that kind of came in who never really got a run of games under Mickey. People are hoping that they'll kind of come in, the O'Neills and these guys like Brennan. But, you know, we don't know enough of what's gone on in Tyrone to know if that's going to be the case. Like even in this game, you know, whatever team will actually hit the field and then what's going to play in the next few games, it's very hard to see that. But that's what the hope was. When people are picking their Tyrone team that could possibly go out, and you're judging guys who've been brilliant at club level or underage level, and we haven't seen them as senior, people then are like, you know, if you add them into what was already there, you're going to have a great team. big one for Tyrone, I think, is getting Colin McShane back fit and their big guns, like, you know, and having them available. You know, then they have a chance. But yeah, as you said, it's like a pretty close to championship, and during those games, you know, there definitely won't be a challenge match feel to it, and anything can kind of happen when they go at each other.
Yeah, you've Donegal then who played Tyrone this weekend, and again they a bit like Kerry the way they went out against Cavan. There was a lot of hype. They beat Armagh and Tyrone, and there's just this thing with Donegal that they almost just falter when the pressure comes on. The hype builds. You know, Mayo in the Super Race, Tyrone the year before. They just seem to falter when, you know, people just hype them up nearly.
Yeah, it's a strange one. And I think as well that I'd seen in other years they kind of really peak early in the year.
Yeah.
They really peak early in the year, and they kind of find it hard to keep it going. Like Cavan really come at them with like a lot of physical and a lot of intensity, and the game kind of ran for Cavan in that final. Like, but and Cavan just brought it back to basics, and they won their battles. You know, and at the end of the day, I think like if you look at the Dublins and these teams, they have all their systems and everything like that. But if you want to kick the ball out to the middle of the field and you want to kick the ball in on top of their full back line, and you want to go man for man, they're going to beat you any way you want to go. And I don't know, to Donegal, kind of their back line is very suspect. You know, their back line is very suspect. And I think when you really do push it up to them in those big games, yeah, there's a few creaks there. And again, you're saying about, like, there's a reason why they kind of play the way they do. They're obviously not as defensive as they were in the past, but there's a reason why they kind of play the way that they do. And yeah, Cavan really exposed a lot of weaknesses, like, and I even heard in kind of a lot of the preseason talk this year. Yeah, that's the fear of a lot of Donegal people, is that their backline isn't strong enough, and they definitely don't have enough cover there. They've got so much talent in their forward line, and their midfield, they've got some really strong big men. You know, they can get all kinds of midfield combinations there, and wing forwards. You know, combination of players who can win ball in the air and play football, and like Hugh McFadden works really hard, but their backline is that's where they really need to maybe uncover some players in this league.
Yeah, the other game on in Armagh, we go back to that Roscommon Dublin game and how important the first game is. This is a real big one, because whoever loses this is probably staring at a relegation playoff, you think.
Yeah, and it's an interesting one with Armagh, obviously with Star Donoghue up there, and like to see kind of what they were quite impressive last year, I think, in terms of the improvements they made in the league, especially. But then they kind of flattered to deceive. But yeah, Monaghan have so much quality there. You know, I don't think that last year. Yeah, I think it's very hard to judge on those two. Like, they both see that as games which they should be winning if they really kind of on. But at the same time, yeah, it depends. That them two teams could be training very hard at the moment, and you don't know what kind of an outfit could turn up. You know, they could be leggy, or another side could be completely fresh. Like, so you don't know, and that could be decisive in a game like that.
Yeah, because we obviously saw Monaghan get caught out with the trading, and Banty's banned now, so whether that hampers them or not, I don't know.
Yeah. So when they were playing Dublin in the challenge game,
Yeah, seen that, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think Banty being banned like in the league game is going to make any massive difference, to be honest. But yeah, it just that I think all of the counties were doing a relative amount of work, you know, on their own, whether they're doing it collectively and they shouldn't have been doing it, or if they were just doing it on their own. But I don't think that when the teams actually do come together, and the last few weeks, what teams have been doing is going to be very, you know, it's going to play a massive role in terms of what we're going to see in these games. And the teams who have trained really hard, you're going to see them tired looking legs, and you've seen that with the hurl on the last week. Like the Waterford Cork game was a big one. Like the defending was just, it was just, because you could see lads were tired. They had it in their legs, but they just didn't have the injection.
Yeah.
They were running back. They were just that bit off, and he could have had twice as many goals there. And it was 7. They could have been well over 10. Like, so you're going to see that in the football as well.
So to wrap up Division 1, just get a few predictions. Who do you think will win it, and the 2 to go down if you had to pick?
I think that division is going to be won by Dublin, and I think that the 2 who are going to be in trouble will be Roscommon, and I think it'll be Monaghan. I think. Yeah, I think Armagh might do Monaghan, and yeah, that's 50-50 now, to be fair. But yeah, like on the other side, you'd be mad to see it like anyone else really struggling in the Northern Roscommon, even though I'd love to see them get upset there.
Yeah, I mean, probably from Roscommon's point of view, they'll probably try and build a bit of momentum, try and get good performances, get that fitness up. And they'll probably know in the back of their heads, obviously they won't say it, but try and prepare for that one big game to keep them up.
Yeah. It's a strange one for Roscommon because they've no, as I said, they're not really putting any fresh blood into the team over the last few years. Yeah. So it's not like giving guys games or opportunities, more so than maybe guys who felt they need a bit more opportunity. But they're not going to be bringing in guys who are completely new or anything like that. And they're just kind of, I think these games now, as I said, they're going to be training for down the line. But these games are still a test for them because this team is around for a while and they are a test for them. So they need to kind of be standing up in these games and being competitive. Roscommon are competitive in all the games. That's good league. They just need to be competitive.
Yeah, I think for Division 1, I'm going to go with Tyrone to win. I said it a few weeks ago. I think just maybe that new management bounce, and they might just catch a Kerry in the final. I think Dublin will be fine. I'll back them for the All Ireland, but Dublin will just ease their way through. But I think Tyrone I think they'll go strong enough in Division 1 this year. So might move to Division 4, and usually people leave it last. So I said we'll go second, maybe Division 4 to give them a bit more a chat. Probably one group looks tricky enough with Sligo, Leitrim, Louth and Antrim. I think probably Sligo, Louth and Antrim will be battling for the top two there. Sligo and Louth have new management teams in with Tony McEntee and obviously Mickey Harsh coming in. So probably a bit of a buzz like the likes of Tyrone, new management team coming in, and hopefully they'll go well.
Yeah, well, I'd imagine there'd be a huge buzz in Louth with Mickey in, and then there's obviously a big financial injection there as well. So in terms of seeing that, you won't really have much because he hasn't had enough time. But the big one for Louth for me that I'd be interested in seeing is Kieran Byrne, who's back with them. He was over in Australia with Carlton, and he was superstar for Louth before he went over, and he had a massive immediate kind of impact in Australia, and then played the international rules. And he's had some really bad injuries since he's come back. And I think him, as much as a managerial change, I think him having a big year will be massive on them. And if he can hit the ground running, I think Louth are the team for me in Division 4. I think are going to come up there. Sligo surely have to do better than. There has to be improvement there. Like, it's dour stuff at the moment with them, and there has to be an improvement. Even though it doesn't necessarily look likely, but they had some good underage teams coming through there. So if they can find that transition right between kind of find some leadership amongst the group that was already there, and then filter through some talented youngsters, but they are very young. They're just in a tough spot now, Sligo. But if they can get out of that division, it'll make a big difference. Yeah,
because probably Louth have as good a forward in Division 4 with Sam Mulroy. You never really get to see Louth because they're never really on the television, but you hear anytime they play, and even that championship game, he scores everything for them. The 1-7 at their championship game last year, he scored everything. So it'd be interesting to see how they get on. Yeah, they have good forwards, and they've a variety of forwards in there as well. They can go. They've some big men in there as well, and they're quite strong around the middle. Like, I seen Louth play in the championship 2 years ago against Wexford, and there's loads of quality footballers there. But it's just kind of, it's. I think they're definitely better than Division 4. Like in recent years in the league, they've done well, and they've been a good league team over the decade. So I'd be shocked if they don't come up. Be absolutely shocked if they don't come up. But as I said, you don't know. Like, Mickey could come in there and he could be aiming fully for championship, and he could be training lads hard. But I think that'd be a bit mad to be training fully for championship and you've knocked out and you're in Leinster. So I'd imagine, if anything, they'll be targeting the league and getting out of Division 4 and then being competitive in the championship. So I'd be shocked if they don't come out. And he's a very good player. But again, I think that the main man for Louth, the best player they've produced in I don't know how long is Byrne, and they need to get the best out of him. Yeah, you have Leitrim and Antrim then. Antrim were close enough last year, but I think the first game back they lost to Wicklow by, I think they conceded 7 goals in that game and really threw us away. And obviously Leitrim are already coming down. So I probably think Sligo and Louth will be my 2 picks to get out of that group, but I don't know what you think. Leitrim were very unlucky last year. They were competitive, and they fought hard.
and that was tight, that division. I think that, yeah, Antrim might have a bit of a a boost, which you never know from seeing the hurlers, and kind
Yeah,
of
yeah.
a bit of a boost from that. I would say myself, like Wexford are in there as well, aren't they?
The other group, yeah.
Yeah. I know that they lost Jonathan Beelan this year. I did a piece on it. I spoke with him, and he was just saying they've been working very hard on their own, kind of physically, and they'd had Paul Gavin in the year before and had done a lot of skill work. Their county, who were way above being in Division 4. I would be saying Louth, and then I would be saying I think Leitrim or Wexford, I think, to get out. I think Sligo, I haven't seen, I'm not following the club football in Sligo or anything like that forensically, but I haven't seen enough or anything to suggest that they're going to be that much better than they were last year. And like, yeah, I don't think there's going to be a massive injection, and management haven't had enough time to, like, so where Leitrim, where they left last year, are good enough to be coming back up. And I think Wexford weren't a million miles off last year as well. Like, it was only a point. I think they went down to the final game where they got nudged.
Yeah.
So, and they've Roach in there now as a manager from the start, and yeah, they could go close as well. So that's what I'd say Louth, and then one of those two.
Yeah, my sort of tip was Sligo to get promoted out of all the divisions. That was the tip I sort of had. So I'll back them. I kind of have Sligo myself, so maybe I have a soft spot for them, and I'm reading too much into it. But I'll go Sligo and Louth to get out of the Division 4.
Yeah, well, there's obviously the talent in Sligo, to an extent, but yeah, like they've just been very, very poor, and last couple of years, even in terms of just the way that they just the whole vibe around things. Like, it's not the buzz, or which is sad to see for kind of football, because you want to see a strong Sligo, and you've got Roscommon, Galway, and Mayo are all very strong at the moment, and yeah, like only a few years ago you were having Sligo knocking on the door as well, and yeah, it's sad to see them down in Division 4, but I don't know, are they ready yet to bounce straight back up?
On to Division 2 then. You have obviously the standout is Mayo straight away. They hop off the page. They're in a group with Downmeath and Westmeath. It's hard to see Mayo not finishing in the top 2 in that.
Yeah. Well, the thing with James Horn is, he's going to give guys games though.
Yeah.
So what kind of a team they have out there, you don't really know. He is going to give guys an opportunity. He's going to play young players. They are going to try different things. So, and especially now that they're in Division 2, they were doing that in Division 1 last year. There's going to be a lot of experimentation there. I think the team who are going to be very strong in that is Meath. I think Meath are going to push really hard to get back to Division 1. And more than, say, as you see with like Roscommon, when they're down there, like, they're a team who really cherish that, trying to get to Division 1 status, and they're kind of a settled team as well. And I think they'll push really hard. So in usual circumstances, you'd obviously fancy Mayo to beat them, or to be getting the better of them in that. But as me, they're going to go all out for promotion, I think, and where Mayo are going to be trying to get a lot different things out of the league, a lot of different things.
Yeah, it mightn't have been the worst thing for Mayo to actually, as you said there, to go down to Division 2 maybe for a year, especially with the retirements happening as well, just to maybe give them a few more young lads a chance, because you saw with the likes of Tommy Conroy, Oshie Mullen, Owen McLaughlin coming in, getting maybe 1 or 2 more, 3 or 4 league games, it might actually work in their favour.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And you've seen there the buzz that the few new lads came in. I just think that Horan has just been fantastic, like from when he was over Mayo previously to now. Like, he really does keep the squad refreshed, for the large part. He does give guys games. He does judge on club form, and he picks kind of a few left of field guys and brings them in and gives them roles, and he knows what he wants from his team. So yeah, I'd expect them to give. But like last year, they experimented a lot, like, and it cost them in the league. So yeah, it's a funny one. Like, he's not keen on having lads kind of sitting around the panel just being there for the sake of being there for a few years. So he will bring lads in, and he will give them games. So yeah, it gives the pressure of them going down or something like that isn't going to be there. It would have been there if they're in Division 1. But he has enough credit in the bank, I think, from what he did previously when he was over them. He won the league then obviously in his first year, so he's shown that, like, when he does kind of put a bit of priority on the league, and last year that that you've seen that a new team coming through. So I don't think people are going to be putting too much pressure on him in the league, no matter what division they're in.
Yeah, a lot was made of them retirements that happened. I don't know how many, it's nearly day after day as a stage, but a lot of them lads weren't even playing. Higgins, Parsons, I don't even know who else off top. David Clark's probably the only one that left the starting 15. Now I know around the camp they're great to have, but it shouldn't affect them too much on the field. They weren't playing.
Yeah, well, I think it would have massively affected them in terms of around the camp. But them lads have now, the younger lads have already got to an Ireland final. So I think like age is just an age, but like experience is experience. And like them lads now who've experienced an Ireland final, they've experienced big games. So they're kind of able to lead things now a bit themselves. And they still have massive leaders there, Aidan O'Shea, Lee Keegan, Patrick Durkin, these guys. The goalkeeper situation will be interesting because Clark was obviously so solid in there for so long, but I think in a lot of ways he held them tactically back in terms of the variety. He didn't have kind of the full variety of kick. But like, was there a more solid keeper outside of Cluxton than him in terms of reliability? So they have to bring someone else in now, which can add to them in some ways. But then again, you need to build up that solidness, which he obviously had at his age and his experience. So that'll be really interesting to see what they do with that, because if they start playing around with it too much, I know like Rob Henley was a really good underage keeper, and had some really big senior games as well. But like, if you start playing around with guys, giving them a game, they're not going to build that sureness and confidence. And I think there's a few other positions which they kind of tinkered with last year around midfield. They're kind of, you see when they were playing Conor Loftus in there and what they were kind of looking for in the mobility and runners. But they have some young lads coming through now, and it'll be interesting to see in the inside line around the middle. It'll be interesting to see how, if them lads can step up, because I don't think anyone would have foreseen the lads who stepped up last year, how many of them did, like, and how quickly they did. So but yeah, for sure he'll give them a go. And I think the Mayo people, like, just I think they appreciate that with Horan. He will give guys a go, like.
Yeah, the other side you have Clare, Cork, Kildare and Laois, and a bit like probably Mayo and Meath on the other side, you have to think Cork and Kildare should be finishing in a top two here.
Yeah, you'd imagine those two would. Cork especially, like, they've got momentum to build on from last year. You'd imagine that they would kick on. Like, it would be very kind of Cork of the last decade to but like, you'd imagine they would, and they show they have a lot of good footballers last year, and they should really be kicking on. Clare have kind of that Clare team that came out, I think it's kind of coming almost to the end to an extent. So they kind of need to get a good bit out of them, and they need to have a solid campaign. Laois have talented players, talented forwards and stuff like that. Laois kind of no more than Westmeath and stuff like that. Their county's kind of just very frustrated, I think, and even the knockout structure kind of makes it even a bit less of an incentive now, because like, what are they really preparing for? It's very hard for them, and do they really feel like they're going to get up to Division 1? That's probably a lot more likely than winning Leinster, like. So but have they had time to prepare for a league to do that? Yeah, it's just very hard on them teams, the likes of Laois, Westmeath. Very hard for them at the moment, the structure and the province that they're in, and just where they are. For them players, I think, to be motivated, and I don't really expect much out of them in terms of promotion.
Yeah, because I actually think they should go down with maybe Westmeath. I think actually they're the two that I think will end up going down. You look at maybe even a county like Kildare. Like last year, they salvaged a bit in the league. They were looking poor at the start before that lockdown came, but they're a county that should be probably, I'm not saying getting beaten Dublin or getting close, but they should be doing better. Meath fairly routed them in the end last year.
Yeah, well, what I would say about Laois and Westmeath first is they have, like, I think there's definitely good footballers there, like Westmeath, the likes of John Heston, Kieran Martin. If they got Jerry Egan, these guys fit, like, they definitely have really good footballers. Laois again, John O'Loughlin, Evan O'Carroll, like, they have good. But it's just a case of getting those guys out fit, the best out of them. Like, them, even those names, kind of seeing them injured, not fully at their best. And yeah, it's just hard. If I could, and as I said, we haven't seen these teams play.
Yeah.
We haven't heard about them because we've only been back at it for a few weeks. But if I was to see a Westmeath team or a Laois team with all of their best players, all looking really fit, then you could say, oh, geez, these could do something. But on the assumption that they're going to kind of appear as they have over recent years, yeah, I think you're right. And you're right about Kildare. Like, they have so much quality there. And like, even that bunch of players who came through, like Dan Flynn, Paul Cribben, Tommy Mullock is retired now, which is mad, but it also shows you the options they have around the middle with Kevin Feely, the young Masterson. Like, they have a really good bunch who are competitive, or if not better than a lot of the quality Dublin players at underage level. And then they have the team on the under-20 All-Ireland. So they have two groups of players coming through, and they need to get the mix of those right. And they've got Jack O'Connor over them. And yeah, you'd imagine that the ingredients are all there for them to do something, but it didn't obviously go for them last year.
Yeah, so to get promoted out of Division 2 and relegated, who would be your picks there?
I think Meath and Mayo.
Yeah.
To get relegated, I would say Clare. Yeah, I think Clare. I think the Clare are they're kind of coming a bit stagnant at the moment. So I think Clare, yeah.
Yeah, Down is the other team we kind of didn't really mention. They're up from Division 3. But again, Down are a steady enough team, and I think they'll have enough.
Yeah, Down have lovely football and style, and they have good manager, and and they've a manager who was there from last year, and they have the quality there, and they've got really good club football, and they have a bit of momentum from coming up. So, but like, it's such fine margins. Like, there's only a few games added, and it gives such fine margins between teams to go down. It's very hard to pick, but I just think that Clare kind of are at a base, and I'd see that they kind of would be more liable to fall down. But again, they could get a big win on the first day, and it could see them through. Like,
yeah, and then lastly, Division 3, you have Cavan, Derry, Longford, and Fermanagh in the first group there. Cavan, obviously just off the back of an Ulster Championship, and they find themselves in Division 3, which doesn't happen too often for a provincial winner, but they'll be looking to get straight back up, because wasn't so long ago they were playing Division 1.
Yeah, exactly, and they have been such a strong league team for so long. They were yo-yoing between 1 and 2, and they were so consistent in that, like, anytime they come straight back up very strongly from 2, and yeah, they were kind of mirroring Roscommon for years. Like, I think that they are, they're strong. They're a strong outfit, and you'd imagine they will come back up. But there's some tricky obstacles in there. Like when you're talking, Derry people are very sure of themselves and sure their team always. But like, there are good things coming out of Derry, and their club football is obviously very strong, so they have talent there, and a bit of momentum coming from last year. And you wouldn't know with them, they could cause an upset. Longford are a good team, like, so I don't think it'd be easy for them, but I think Cavan are definitely a little bit ahead of the rest of the pack there. The rest of the pack then are very...
Yeah, because that group with Cavan, Derry, Longford, Fermanagh, it's a strong enough group compared to the other one now with Tip, Limerick, Wicklow and Offaly. That group is a strong group, and there's no real easy game. I mean, Derry actually is my pick to get out of Division 3, probably along with Cavan. I think, they're a decent team, and they probably should be playing Division 2. But as you said there, Longford are no pushovers, and certainly Fermanagh aren't either. They always make it difficult for teams. Yeah.
Well, Fermanagh, you kind of, they didn't really have a brilliant year last year, but Fermanagh, generally have been a very competitive team. But Longford are a good team. Like, I think that they're not, that they kind of don't have the quality really to do much better than they have been doing, but they've been competitive, and they'll definitely, like, every year they're there and thereabouts. Just kind of being putting consistently big performances together. Like, it's been a bit of a push for them, but I think they'll definitely challenge. On the other side, you've got, Limerick, like Offaly are a team again who, if they get a bit of momentum, can be hard. But the teams coming up from Division 4 last year, like Limerick, you'd imagine would be in trouble. I think Tip should be quite strong. Philly Ryan is joining them this year from St. Bridget. It'd be interesting how he molds in, because their forward line is quite a cohesive unit. Like it's quite operates quite well. It gives them, I suppose, more opportunity to keep Quinlivan and the half forward line a bit more. But Philly Ryan is a good player. Like he was on Dublin squads, and won in our Ireland on a Dublin squad. Was in Dublin under 21 team, so he's a good player. And they obviously were, they showed their quality last year. So I think they'll come out with Cavan. I think they'll be the two favourites. Yeah, I think you're right in that Derry will be competitive, but I think those two are just a bit ahead of them, a good bit ahead of them.
Yeah, Tip's an interesting one because they just about stayed up. I think they bet Leitrim in that last game last year to stay in Division 3. And Limerick took them to extra time in the semi-final. Limerick could have easily beaten them that day. Watch that. I think Limerick missed a mark right in front of the post even to get to penalties. Yeah. And they just had that one big day against Cork, and they did show their quality. Conor Sweeney and Mike Quinlivan would probably get in any team in the country. So they do have them talented players. We've seen that 4 or 5 years ago. So it will be interesting with them. But Limerick and Wicklow probably be happy enough that they're in this group, that they have a fair chance of staying up. Maybe one of them, Offaly again are a decent team on their day, but they'd fancy their chances, the two of them, of staying up anyways.
Yeah, exactly. It's kind of the luck of the draw on that side. It put a lot of the stronger teams on one side.
Yeah.
They'll go at each other very hard. I think Tip, you're right. Like even that sideline from Sweeney against Limerick, they were very lucky.
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah.
But and they won't have Colin Reardon, which they had in the championship. But like, I just think it was kind of a confidence thing once they got to that Munster final. Like, as you're hearing the stuff out of their back room before that, they were saying, that they've consistently beaten Cork, like consistently under lads. And once they got to the final, it kind of was just a realization, lads, right, the bollocks and stops, like we're here now, let's just believe in ourselves. And if they can carry that, because they do have Quinlivan and Sweeney inside, and Quinlivan wasn't going to be around last year, he only came back. And then they have Stephen O'Brien around the middle, and he's kind of only getting back to himself towards the end of last year because he'd gone off playing hurling. They've Colin O'Shaughnessy in the back line. I think their half back line last year was brilliant. 3 small kind of beavers across the half back line. And I just think they have a really good kind of 15, 16 players. And then when you add Philly Ryan into that, it kind of gives them an extra, which makes a big difference in that regard. And if they come at the league strong to kind of get promotion, I think, and if they can keep them lads fit. But injuries are going to play a big part, because there's no doubt the lads are going to be getting injured. Bodies are having to readjust, but I think Tip, I do really rate that Tip team. So I think they'll come up, and I think Cavan as well, if they prioritize that. And you'd imagine that Tip will be prioritizing getting back to Division 2.
Yeah, Tip are kind of they're a likeable team. I've always enjoyed. Maybe that's just going back to 2016. I can always remember that Galway game. They just play good football, they kick it, and you always remember Sweeney and Quinlivan up front. They are just a likeable team, and they play good football. Yeah,
exactly. And they're a balanced team, and I like the way they play. Is that half back line loves to get forward, and they really tackle. They tackle. They get numbers behind the ball, but they actually then push up and tackle. Reardon gave them that extra kind of in the half forward line option, but they do kick the ball out. And they like to kick the ball out to long. They like to contest the ball. They've got big men out there. They've got loads of good players around the middle, not just the lads I mentioned. And then they've got the quality inside. So they have the personnel that allows them to play that way, because they've got big ball-winning, talented players. But yeah, they do. They play to it. A lot of teams have them options, but they still play a very kind of neutral game. So I loved the way they played last year. Really enjoyed the way they played. And to be fair, Cavan, I really enjoyed the way Cavan played. You have to realise that Cavan coming off, they had all that underage success, and even their initial league success for years was all playing a really boring, awful football. So Mickey Graham's in there now, and he's trying to develop that by keeping obviously the core principles that they had, but then trying to develop it. And those two teams, I think, had great success last year playing a more risk-averse type of football, or less risk-averse type of football. And I was delighted to see them do well. And if they can keep that up, I think it could set a bit of a trend for these teams who are, league teams essentially, who are kind of hoping to get an upset. Why not, play to your strengths, go for it a bit more rather than just setting up to lose by a bit less. So,
Yeah.
especially only got one crack at it now this year as well, more than last
Yeah.
year.
So like, obviously you mentioned Cavan and Tip to go up. Is it Limerick and Wicklow to go back down for you?
Yeah, really. Those two, like, they just came up, and you'd imagine they'd be struggling to keep it. Like, you'd love to see Limerick stay up because they did show well in that championship game, and they do have some players. The Ian Corbett centre back is absolutely fantastic player. Like, but yeah, those two you'd imagine would be in trouble.
Yeah. So to wrap up, if you had one banker and maybe one outside sort of tip to go up or down, who would across the 4 divisions? Who would you be betting on?
Oh, a banker to go up.
Or get relegated, either or.
Yeah, I would say a banker to go up. I would say Mayo. No, actually, I would say in that division that the team who I think is going to go up is, I think, Meath. I think Meath are going to go up. I think Meath are just going to prioritise going up. And I'd be shocked if they don't. And then an outside bet for someone to go up. I didn't really pick many outside bets in my to go up. I kept it very solid. Who did I I went for in Division 1 Dublin. An outside team. I don't know, maybe an outside team, maybe to go down more so than to go up. See one of the in Division 1, one of the teams to go down, one of the Ulster teams, I think would be an outside bet you might see go down. Even the likes of a Donegal or Tyrone go down, I think it could easily happen. So but I just think that it's very, very hard to predict. It's very, very hard to predict because we've seen so little of the teams. I think even from what we get in our first dose, even after that, you can't really take too much of it. You have to take it at face value, like. So it'd be hard to do, but yeah, I think Meath they're going to go after that. They're going to set out their stall. We're going to get back to Division 1, and if they can have a competitive Leinster Championship and get back to Division 1, it's been a great year. And I think they're going to go straight out for that. And I think they have the quality to do that. And they showed that when they came up from Division 2 the last time. And I think that in Division 1, it's going to be very competitive. And I think those Ulster teams, I think some of them could find themselves in trouble. Because as I said, you'd expect Monaghan or Armagh to go down, but they could easily get an upset against one of those. They're in trouble. And Roscommon fancy themselves. They said that's a settled Roscommon team. I don't think they're going to have much joy in the group, where they are. Beyond that, you never know.
Yeah, because we've seen with the championship last year, predictions nearly go out the window with Kerry losing in the Donegal and Cavan thing. Yeah. So it's probably hard to see plain sailing with all the divisions, especially as you mentioned with the training. We just don't know where teams are at, and they could be in bother after one loss this weekend. Yeah, no, it's going to be very open, and just looking forward to it really, and seeing. Yeah. The main thing I think that we have to be kind of watching out for is like teams are going to be tiring and stuff like that. But the main thing is just the style of play and the stuff that the teams are working on, how they're going to adapt to. I suppose the rules aren't going to make that much difference, but they're just seeing how they bed in, and just seeing the style of play. And I'm just really interested in seeing. I think the main one in terms of the kickouts. I think there was a big difference last year in Championship in the teams kicking the ball out long. You've seen it even in the second half. Dublin did against Mayo. They started to go long to Howard and Fenton. And you've seen it with Cavan. You've seen it with Tipperary. Teams going long a lot more. Clark has gone for Mayo. So you're going to have another keeper in who's going to have more range. Are they going to go long? And I think that's going to be something which is definitely going to be worth observing, and how the teams play up in defensive setups and stuff like that. That's brilliant, Eamon. Thanks very much for coming on again, and hopefully it'll be a good league campaign and maybe Roscommon to stay up. That's the main thing. Yeah.